News Radio WHAM 1180 welcomes you to Ask the Experts. No matter what the topic, we've assembled the most knowledgeable people in Rochester to answer your questions. It's Ask the Experts on News Radio WHAM 1180.
I'm Joe Lomonaco. Welcome to Ask the Experts. It was B.B. King who said, "The beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take it away from you." And it is, so we're going to be talking tonight about being a lifelong learner. And one of the places that has had a dedication to that for almost as long as I've been in Rochester, and I came up here in the late 1980s, is something you might have known as the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at RIT. Now, you may also know that they've experienced a little bit of a change, not in mission, but in name. They are now referred to as OLLI at RIT, OLLI, so you can see how that goes together. Osher Lifelong Learning, okay? See where it goes. And we are honored to be joined by two of their senior course instructors. We have Chris Ryan. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
And we have Lisa Jadwin. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
It is nice to meet you both. And so we are in the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, OLLI, at RIT right now as we speak with you. I want to just talk a little bit about this place. And I don't know which one of you wants to take the question, so I'll throw it out to both. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the place. From what little I know, it was these types of institutes, and Rochester is not the only one, they exist in other places, kind of came into existence in sort of the late 80s, like around 87, 88, somewhere around there?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the exact date of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, but here at RIT, there was an organization called the Athenaeum, which has been around, which has been around since the 1990s.
Okay.
And in 2006, we joined the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute program.
Okay.
And that is a program that has about 120 affiliates around the country, all associated with colleges or universities, and all set up through the funding and the brainstorm, if you will, of Bernard Osher, who funded each of the institutes with an endowment to make sure that they would be able to manage and continue to grow.
My curiosity question then is, I wonder what the why was. The why to, we think of institutions of higher learning as they have a certain purpose, and they tend to have a certain function. You utilize it for a function, and then for young adults, I guess, which is more their mission, they kind of move on from that point. But I'm wondering what the why was to say, you know what, learning doesn't end at a certain point in life. It does need to continue, and maybe it has, it could be benefited with a structured environment to continue that learning.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. One way to look at it is that human life has three phases if we're lucky to live long enough. One of those is our youth, where we get a lot of our education. The second one is middle age, where we don't have time to get educated. And then there's the third chapter, where we find ourselves with maybe we're retired, or maybe we're having less to do. Maybe the children have grown up and left home, and it's time to do something else. And yet people don't want to necessarily go back to work. They want to learn something new, and they want to be together with people of the same kind of values.
Okay.
And the values are that learning doesn't stop when you graduate from college, and that learning is something that is enjoyable rather than difficult. So we have one of the wonderful things about OLLI's is that we don't have any homework. We don't have exams. No one raises their hand and says, is this going to be on the test? And many of us in the classes welcome interruptions and comments and all kinds of things from students, or I like to call them participants.
Yeah, we don't really use the word
student.
student.
We don't use the word student, but we also are very educated as course leaders to say, I don't know. And other people in education might never have experienced that. And so that brings the participants into the class to make their own contributions.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic environment, it sounds like. It was Einstein who said that wisdom is not a product of schooling, but the lifelong attempt to acquire it. The acquisition, then, that is a great motivator, I would suspect, and not only for those who are instructing, we're going to get to how that all works in just a minute, but for those who choose to say, look, I'm not done yet. I haven't put the final period on the end of my acquisition of knowledge. There's something else I may have not had the opportunity or not even known that I was interested in until this opportunity came up.
Exactly. And I think for me, I have suffered from a lifelong overabundance of curiosity.
Good for you. Good for you. You're dangerously curious.
I am dangerously curious. Yes, that's a good way to put it. I was just one of those kids who liked school.
Okay.
But I think when I got to the point where I was getting ready to retire, and I thought to myself, okay, what am I going to do with my time? How am I going to spend all this time that I'm suddenly going to have? I realized that I didn't want to I love to read. I read a lot of books, but that wasn't going to be enough. And so I started searching online for opportunities to take classes at various places. And I was also in the process of moving back to the Rochester area at the time. And so I found the website for here, and I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. And it has been a gift to me. It has just been such a gift to me over the years.
I would imagine that it's part knowledge, it's part socializing, and to find other people who are, as you mentioned, Lisa, like-minded like you, who want to be a part of expanding their horizon. Because at a certain point in time, I would suspect, when you're younger, you're always looking to the outward. You're gathering, you're moving out, you're building, and then I imagine there does come to a certain point in time when you kind of get at a crossroads, and you can say to yourself, okay, am I going to shrink down my life? I've retired, I have stopped working, or are you going to say, look, that expansion is still something that I have a lust for, and filling my brain with interesting things is still something that I want to do.
Right, and you don't have to worry about, is this going to work? Is this going to lead to a job?
Yes. Higher education seems to be a tool to achieve an end. And what OLLI seems to do, if I'm getting this right, is it shows you that the expansion of your brain cells and the accumulation of knowledge is in it of itself the value. That is the value of this, is to keep yourself motivated to say, well, what else and what else and what else? Not to say that I have to use it for anything. Maybe you will. Right. But the acquisition of the knowledge is the usefulness of it.
And I think a lot of people say to themselves, I was so dedicated when I was learning a trade or I was in college to dedicating myself to a single thing and looking forward to that career. This is the chance to take those courses that you never took because they were, not part of your curriculum or the requirements that you had to take. So you could take geology if you never got to take a geology course. You can take a course on the Bayeux Tapestry, which Chris taught, which was absolutely fascinating. Things that you wonder about, but you didn't really have a chance to learn earlier.
Yeah.
We're going to put a pin in the conversation because we have so much else to talk about. Senior course instructors Chris Ryan and Lisa Jadwin are our guests on Ask the Experts from OLLI at RIT. That stands for the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. We're going to tell you more about where it is. We're going to tell you about how it works, how you can become a part of it, not only in a classroom, but at the front of a classroom when we continue with Ask the Experts. That's next on News Radio WHAM 1180. I'm Joe Lomonaco. Welcome back to Ask the Experts. I'm learning right alongside of you today about OLLI at RIT. OLLI is OLLI and stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at RIT. Maybe it's something that you heard about. They have a new branding, a new name, but their mission remains the same. And we have two senior course instructors with us, Chris Ryan and Lisa Jadwin. And we're going to go over now a little bit of the nuts and bolts. I want to go over about how one becomes a participant. Lisa, you talked about as people that take advantage of the programs here, not as being students, but as participants. So let's start with some of the FAQs here. One would assume that there's an age limit. Is there an age limit?
There is, in the sense that the program is designed for people who are 50 and older. If you're 49 and a half, we're probably not going to turn you away at the door.
Thank you. That's very nice.
But the idea is that it's really geared toward people who are older.
Okay.
In the third chapter.
In the third chapter, as Lisa puts it.
Well, look, there's always appendices that you can add to the end of a book.
There's no index.
No, absolutely. Okay, so it tends to skew those people who have established themselves. Maybe they've done college education on their own. They've established a career. They have a families, and something in the back of their mind is just maybe gnawing at them a little bit to say, like, look. Yeah, you do your 9 to 5 or whatever it is that sort of pays the bills, but you've got an intellectual curiosity that's gnawing at you back there. So the types of offerings that are available through OLLI, do they kind of span the gamut as to whoever is available to be instructing these courses?
Well, we've got about, at this point, I think we've got about 35 to 40 people who will fairly regularly offer a course during the year. We have 4 terms, and it pretty much depends on what they want to teach or what their background is. We have, for example, a geographer who teaches classes. He was a teacher, I believe, in middle school. He teaches classes on plate tectonics, on climate change, on he did an entire class a couple of years ago on different American rivers and how the river led to population shifts and just really interesting ways of. He also did a class on the Great Lakes on the same idea. We have literature teachers such as Lisa. We have people who teach obscure things that they got interested in, and that tends to be me. They do the research and they put together a class of varying lengths. So it kind of depends on what you want to teach. We're always looking for new teachers. But the curriculum changes from semester to semester depending on who's teaching and what they want to teach. But it's a wide-ranging class.
That's always evolving.
It's always evolving.
Now, I just want to take a quick detour down here. We say it's OLLI at RIT. Now, there are those who might think, it's part of the main campus. It's part of that gigantic metropolis that just continues to get larger and more advanced. This is kind of set off a little bit from the beaten path. So if you're a little bit apprehensive about saying, I don't know if RIT is going to be a place, OLLI tends to have its own little quaint little village that you're sort of in here.
We actually have a dedicated campus that is very up to the minute. It's very technologically equipped for people who have hearing issues or vision issues. We allow Zoom classes to take place. Some classes are in person. Some classes are both. And there's tons of parking. So if that's an issue for you, that's very important. And we have a cafeteria where people can have lunch. Each week we have a lecture with a special person that we bring in. And before that, we have lunch available in the cafeteria, which is right across from us here. So there are chances to socialize in the building and outside of the building. We also have social events that take place outside the building so that people can get to know each other better.
Part of the appeal that I think here is that, number one, it is an educational opportunity and a chance to expand your own horizons, but it is a social environment, and that's what we remember from our higher education. And that was what made it so involving and wonderful for me as a student, was because I was there in my major classes with my classmates, and we were really into it and we were really involved in it. And you can get that way in smaller settings, not only to get good attention, but also to get to meet people who are like-minded like you.
That's one of the great joys of this place. Absolutely. And I cannot emphasize enough how great it is to be in our own separate space, because we're not lost in the mass of that RIT campus, and the parking is really close to the building, which is very important.
Absolutely.
But you're right. It is that companionship that you get with, the people that you meet here, because everybody's here basically for the same reason, because they're interested in learning new things, or because they're interested in creating a community. And those, I think, are the two main kind of the main points of this place.
That's Chris Ryan and
Yeah.
Lisa Jadwin, our senior course instructors at OLLI at RIT, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at RIT. Chris, you mentioned you're a voracious reader. Does being in an environment like this take what you can gain knowledge from the pages of a book. Does this enhance it? Does this take it and make it more, I guess, sticky, I suppose, because when we get in these kinds of situations where maybe there's conversations and there's things that take what's on the page off and dive into it a little bit deeper, that it does help us to retain things a little differently.
Oh, definitely. And if you want to really get into a book, you take one of Lisa's classes.
Okay, we'll get to that. We will. We're going to get to that.
But I mean, that's kind of the point, is that we take the book apart, we discuss it, and it really becomes a much more living thing than just the pages of the book. But I like to do research, so I find books on all different topics fascinating. And I usually, these days, I'm reading them along the lines of, can I get a class out of this?
Always looking for the next thing.
Always looking for the next topic.
OLLI is at RIT, and of course that would lead you to believe, okay, there must be some tuition that has to happen here. So again, we're talking about some of these FAQs, and you can certainly find more online, and we'll get you that website a little later on in the program. So is there a cost to become a participant in this program?
Yes.
Yeah. Our full membership is $365 for a year.
Okay. Wow, $1 a day.
$1 a day,
That's-
absolutely.
okay.
And for that, you can take as many courses throughout the year as you want to. You have access to the undergraduate classes at RIT, not all of them, but most of them that don't have labs or, some specialized thing. You can audit those classes. You can take up to 2 each semester for free, and that's a big advantage.
Yikes.
We have access to the audiology services of NTID. We have use of the RIT library and its many online databases, which is wonderful for a research nerd. And so there are a lot of benefits other than just being a part of this place.
So for $365, you have the ability to expand out into the main campus, and I've heard you can take out books and there's no due dates.
Well, we have our little library here. As you can see, that's where we're sitting.
And you can have access to that main library as well,
Yes.
Plus the classes. So for the amount that a membership will cost you, the available resource that you would have, not only here at OLLI, but through RIT as well, can really almost make you a full-time student again at a later point in life.
And auditing means no exams,
I
no
love
papers,
no exams.
none of that stuff.
You don't have any of the have to do. It really does flip the script on sort of education, I guess, to make it a wanna do as opposed to a have to do, which I would suspect makes you feel really good about participating in it and wanting to take more and more. I would imagine you've seen other participants that just kind of snowball, and they
Yes.
said, well, I'm going to dip my toe in with 1, and now I'm taking 4 or whatever.
And we encourage participants to bring a friend to class, to 1 or 2 classes, to see what it's like before they make the commitment to, join up. And I've seen a lot of people move from somebody who came as a one-time participant to people who decided to take the leap and become members.
And that really is how... That's the best marketing you could possibly do. The best way to let people know how cool it is or how engaging it can be is to say, like, they start talking about it, and then somehow or other they wind up telling 4 friends, and they wind up, if 50% of them show up, you're going to wind up having... How big is the enrollment currently, I guess?
We have
roughly
500, 510, something like that.
Okay.
And we had more members before the pandemic. We did lose some, but we're building back up.
But having the technological resources that many of us have now, I would suspect that that's not only helped people that might be a little bit still in the I don't like being around others if I can avoid it, or maybe I'm a snowbird and I want to do my membership, but I still want to be able to be away for the winter and take a course or whatever. It does sort of meet people where they are. Instead of having to come into a physical place, they can still take advantage of it no matter where where they happen to be.
That is true. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
That is so fantastic. All right, we're up against our next break. Chris Ryan and Lisa Jadwin are here. And when we come back, I want to find out their stories. How did they get involved in this place? And how did they go from being those who consume knowledge, and they still are those that consume knowledge, but also wanting to share things that interest them with other people? We'll come back with more on OLLI at RIT on Ask the Experts. That's next on News Radio WHAM 1180. Welcome back to the second half of Ask the Experts on News Radio WHAM 1180. I'm Joe Lomonaco. My guests are senior course instructors Chris Ryan and Lisa Jadwin from OLLI at RIT. OLLI stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. You can learn more at rit.edu/OLLI for OLLI, and that will take you right to the homepage so that you can learn about this place and about its offerings. And also, before I forget, when is the enrollment period, or is it an ongoing enrollment period?
It's pretty much an ongoing period. We have, as I mentioned before, we've got 4 terms. So, at the beginning of each term is always the easiest time to enroll. But you can actually come in at any time. And many of our courses are recorded as well. So if you come in like the 3rd week of a term, you can go back and look at the recordings for the first couple of weeks if you want to. Okay. But 3 times a year, usually late August, late December, and late March, we have an introductory session for the following term where we invite new members to come in and learn about us. So that's something that they can do as well.
So kind of seasonally, sort of?
Yeah, but people can join anytime they want. There's no, we would never turn you away. Absolutely.
Okay. So it's rit.edu/OLLI. That's where you can... All the membership details are right there. You can see what's being offered. You can learn a little bit about it and learn a little bit about its mission, too. And some of the best things about it is that this is for you. OLLI is designed for the satisfaction of an intellectual itch, pretty much. It's not about papers or grades or having to study for things. It's about the joy of experiencing what you are experiencing and expanding your horizons. So, Lisa Jadwin, I want to go to you. What brought you here in the first place?
What brought me here was that I had walked away from my 35-year college teaching job during the pandemic.
Okay.
And the reason I did that was because teaching online for me was impossible. It was like being married online or raising a child online. It just was not feasible for me to have the kind of classes that I wanted to have. And I looked up teaching opportunities. I had a friend who taught at the Athenaeum many years ago, and I found OLLI, and I walked in one day, and Mary, who is our fearless leader, and several other people were there, and I said, would it be possible for me to teach here?
Would it be possible?
There was this silence, and she said, when can you start? So I teach courses in literature and film, which were the 2 things that were my bread and butter when I was teaching in college. But I really teach here because of the active classroom.
Okay.
My courses are largely in-person only, and the reason for that is the back and forth that takes place in the classroom, not just me talking, but everyone participating, asking questions, making comments, having the kind of immersive classroom experience that is very unusual in an undergraduate course.
What's been the dynamic then? You came from higher education in 3+ decades. I would imagine the classroom setting had a certain, I hate to call it a vibe, but it probably did. With because every 4 years you're sort of changing over students, and they'll grow up, age out. The next group comes in, it's like, oh, I've seen this before. But working in the dynamic of older learners who are choosing to expand their horizon in some way because they're interested about things, or because they're looking for something to stimulate them as they're maybe not working, or they have just more time as their kids have grown up. What's the vibe in the room like as it compares to your other higher education experience?
Well, I taught a film course last semester in which I showed 5 documentary films worth discussing. And 50 people showed up for the course. We watched the documentary in one class, and then in the next class, we discussed it. And the discussions got so vibrant and so interesting that we actually ran half an hour late every single week. And what that tells you is how much immersion and how much participation we have from participants. I don't need to be up there talking. They already know what they've seen.
Do you find that can also be the case where it's like, you know what, I don't need to lead the discussion. You guys are doing fine. And I'm enjoying watching where this is going because maybe it wasn't where you thought it was going to go in the first place.
Exactly. And one thing about all the courses I've taught here is that I learn a lot from the people in the room. And that was not generally my experience with undergraduate learners.
Okay.
They were there to sort of listen to what I had to say, write it down, and then regurgitate it.
It was a tool to get them to a place.
Exactly.
Instead of being I'm not going anywhere in particular. I'm doing this for the joy of doing it. Which
and no stupid questions. So, and I'm teaching Great Expectations right now, and one student said, "This sounds stupid, but how do we read this?"
That's not a stupid question.
It was a great question. We had a fantastic discussion about it.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, this is a great selling for your classes. So we want to bring Chris into the conversation as well. Chris Ryan is another senior course instructor. What brought you here in the first place?
Well, I was looking for a place to come and keep my brain active, basically, and just to learn. And so I was a member for a number of years before I ever considered sticking my toe into the course leader aspect of things. And basically what happened is another one of our longtime and one of our best teachers here, a woman named Debbie Huff, kind of took me under her wing and said, "I think you could do this." And so she kind of got me going on how to structure a course and that. And what I find now, as I mentioned before about reading books, I'm always looking for, that would make a good course, because I'm curious about a lot of things. I like to teach classes that have something to do with the intersection of art and history.
Okay.
So I've done a couple of courses. I did one a few years ago. I titled it Stolen Culture, an Effect of Colonialism. And I looked at how particularly the British Empire, I did tend to pick on them, went around the world when they were building their empire and then lifting cultural artifacts from the places they conquered and basically building the British Museum out of that. And then I did another kind of a follow-up to that on the Nazi art thefts during World War II and kind of what happened, and then some of the attempts to try to find that material and get it back to the descendants of the original owners. And then I've done a lot of one 90-minute session on a variety of different topics. And what I find is that it took me a while to get over my fear that I wouldn't know enough to teach the course, that somebody would ask me a question that I couldn't answer.
All right, so imposter syndrome, and it happens everywhere.
Oh, everywhere. Absolutely. And I think that, just this idea that I wouldn't know the answer.
Right.
And what I realized is that that's part of the fun, is that somebody leads you in they ask a question that's just a little off the topic or even right on the topic, but an aspect you hadn't thought of.
Tickles your research brain.
It tickles my research brain, yes. So for me, that's part of the fun.
And one more question before we have to wrap up this segment. Who can become then an instructor?
Anybody who's a member.
Okay.
All they have to do is decide that there's something that they either love to do or that they know about or that they did in their prior life, and they want to share that with other people. And then there's people here who will work with, as Debbie worked with me, will work with them to help them shape that into a class of some length. And we'll help them do it.
Yeah, that goes back to what, Lisa, you were talking about. You had an academic background, so creating lesson plans, creating sort of outlines, you had all that toolkit, but other people don't come in. I was curious that there is a resource that will help mentor those that are coming in to say, look, this is, you have all of this stuff. How are you going to structure it so that it actually makes sense to somebody who doesn't have your background and is coming into it from the first, from the jump, really?
And in-person classes enable me to say to participants that I know through the class, hey, you're really good at this. Why don't you teach a class on? You really know a lot about mountain climbing, I said to Wolf, one of my students. And he looked at me like I was from Mars. But I'm going to keep after him, and I'm going to keep pulling people out of classes and saying, you really have great things to say. Why not?
Yeah. And well, all right, so keep looking at rit.edu/OLLI to see if a mountain climbing course shows up, and then you'll know Lisa got her man. That's Lisa Jadwin and Chris Ryan, our senior course instructors at OLLI at RIT, OLLI at RIT. That stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Find them at rit.edu/OLLI to learn about membership, to learn about the courses. How do you sign up? How could you like to become an instructor? All of that is right there for you, so you can take advantage of this incredible resource that we have here, adjacent to the Rochester Institute of Technology. All right, final break time. We're going to take that, come back to wrap things up on Ask the Experts next on News Radio WHAM 1180. Back to wrap things up on Ask the Experts on News Radio WHAM 1180. I'm Joe Lomonaco, and we are at OLLI at RIT in this episode. OLLI stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at RIT. So it's spelled OLLI. That's how you remember what it is. You're also going to remember that rit.edu/OLLI is where you will find these wonderful folks, these people with intellectual curiosities who that flame never burned out, or maybe it was reignited later in their life and they found like-minded people, and this wonderful place exists that you can take advantage of for $1 a day, $365 for a membership for an entire year. rit.edu/OLLI. I want to throw something out. There might be some people that think like, wow, college environment, that's intimidating. I don't know whether I want it. I don't know whether I can do this. Whether this is right for me. I would imagine you get people from all different perspectives and all different backgrounds that come in. Some a little bit more timid than others, but they find that they're able to. Some need to bust out of their shells. Some need to throw more logs on their fire that other places don't give them. And this is kind of a wonderful amalgamation of all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a place that gives people the opportunity to really delve into their passions in a way that maybe they haven't had the chance before. So I get people who come up to me after classes sometime and say, got a great idea for a course that you should teach. And my response to that is always, no, you should teach it. It's your passion. It's your interest. You should teach it.
And you can teach
it. And I've worked with a couple of people, and we've done, they start to put a presentation together, and I offer to sit with them and go through it and help them focus it or design it or whatever. And there are other people here who will happily do the same thing.
You mentioned that you had sort of a mentor when you got here. And so now do you find yourself moving into that role now?
Well, I think that I try to whenever somebody will, comes to me with some curiosity about things. And as I say, I've done it a couple of times. And I'm willing to do it for other people. And I think that, and I know I'm not alone. There are others. We actually have a committee called the Course Offerings Committee, which Lisa and I are both on. And there are about 10 other members as well. And our job is to try to find new teachers within the organization, to work with them. We help people with simple things like remembering deadlines and that kind of thing, but also trying to develop the curriculum in the place and to bring in new ideas and new people.
I guess it would be good to let people know that yes, there's no tests, yes, there's no grades, there's nothing, but there is a structure to it, and sometimes that it's not so loosey goosey that you just show up and just sort of do anything.
Yeah, and that depends on the class because people at Osher OLLI tend to travel a lot, or they have obligations with family or things like that take them away from a class. Classes are recorded for viewing later. So if you miss a class, you can always go watch the recording. And the other thing is that the kind of in and out nature of OLLI makes things flow very freely. There is no attendance policy in most classes. Most classes don't have a course limit of people. So if you wanted to drop in on a course on Schumann, which I did one day when I arrived at the wrong time. I was welcomed into the class. And I also want to mention that there are creative courses here. So we have a guy who's an origami teacher. And he actually has 2 sections because he needs help from another person. We have creative writing classes that produce incredible pieces of writing. And people come into creative writing. I did this. I came into a class and I said, I have no idea how to do this. And the instructor said, it doesn't matter. You have experience. That's all you need.
That's all you need. All you have to do, I think, is to have the courage to start peeling the orange. And maybe you need someone's help. You know, I always ask people to start my orange for me. Sometimes you need that external stimuli in order to say, like, look, okay, well, now I can do it because I found a way in. Last couple of minutes. Chris, how many years have you been associated with OLLI?
Oh, I was trying to remember the exact year that I joined. I want to say probably from about 2009. So I've been here a while.
Okay, so about 17 years. Lisa, what about you?
I'm here for my 4th year.
You're in it for 4th year. Okay, so some differing perspectives. How have you seen, Chris, the offerings change, expand, become more vibrant or user-driven?
In many ways, it's still very similar. The sort of the basic idea of the classes. Some things that have changed. We've loosened up a few of the academic standards. We used to do mainly academic focused courses. We've kind of eased back on that a little bit, so that you have the origami class. We've had people do gardening classes in the summertime. So we're trying to do, and we're doing more lifestyle classes.
Okay.
For example, this is a group of retired people. So we had a class recently on senior living arrangements that, we brought in people from different places in the community. So that kind of thing has changed. The other thing that's changed is the length of our courses. They used to be primarily a full term, which would be 8 to 10 weeks. Now courses are of all differing lengths. It depends on what you have that you want to structure into a class. Is it going to take you a week? Is it going to take you 3 weeks? Is it going to take you 10?
Okay.
We help you do that, and we fit all those things into the schedule.
But I want to maybe just interject. This is not like arts and crafts at the senior center.
No,
this is not what this is.
Definitely not.
It's not arts and crafts.
There is an academic overview to this. And wrapped around it is the intellectual curiosity that is the driving force behind, well, what are we going to pursue? And I would suspect, you don't have as much time here, but I would suspect when you came into some of your first classes, they wound up taking a detour down a way to say, oh, and then I could do this next time, and then I could do this over here. Because of the free exchange of ideas that you find with this group of participants in this environment that you are, is sort of the right fuel for your fire, maybe.
Right. And because we're not dedicated to some particular period, I had one class where we decided to end a week early because we were finished. Because I said to people, are we done? And they said, yeah, we're done.
Why don't we all go out for drinks afterwards?
Exactly. And some of us do that. We go out to lunch. There are many things that can be done over here.
As we mentioned, there are classes that are done through OLLI. There are social activities. There's a chance to interact with people in person in the setting, and then maybe you wind up meeting someone, because they say it's harder to make friends later in life. Yes. This would be a wonderful thing for you to do, to maybe find that way in for someone to say, hey, maybe I'm going to make a connection with another person who has one thing in common, and maybe you'll find more.
I think that's true. That's very definitely true. I've made friends here, people that I would never have met otherwise, just simply because of geography or lifestyle interests or something. So I think that's a very important part of it, for sure.
I think it combines the best of higher education with the best of a desire to be in a learning environment. Higher education and the college experience is as much social as it is about academic, and this sort of mirrors that in a setting that is adjacent to a major university. And you've also found, and one last thing I have to mention before we go, is that this OLLI is based here at RIT. It is adjacent to the RIT campus, but through the OLLI program, you can also have access to some other universities, and maybe there are some places that, there's a course at this place that I'd like to take, and I could do that virtually.
We have 4 other OLLIs around the country that we share some of our courses with.
Okay.
So it's the University of California at Chico, the University of Arizona, Arizona State, and Dartmouth.
Oh, my.
So at the moment, it's the four of them. One of the things that's interesting with three of them on essentially the West Coast is that they're in obviously different time zones. So they offer courses that come later in the day for us than some of our normal courses. So that's given people some additional things to appeal to them. So we offer about a dozen of our classes to them, and they do the same with us. So it really has expanded our ability to offer different subjects.
Have we piqued your interest enough? You can find out all about it at rit.edu/OLLI. That's OLLI, and it stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at RIT. We want to thank our senior course instructors, Chris Ryan, thank you, and Lisa Jadwin, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Again, if learning doesn't stop just because you're past the age of where you think education could go. No, you learn throughout your entire life, and if it's something that appeals to you, you can go and check it out for just $1 a day and take advantage of all of the resources that are available at OLLI at RIT. Again, it's rit.edu/OLLI. I'm Joe Lomonaco. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Ask the Experts on News Radio WHAM 1180.